Okay, so hello and welcome back to another Unity tutorial. In this one, I'm going to be showing you how and why to use Blender in your game. So obviously I've been doing this kind of like mini-series, I guess. I didn't really mean to start it, but it kind of took off, well, a bit. So it's just the how and whys. So it's like, obviously, why should you use a particular thing? So Cinemachine, interfaces, whether it's coding related or just Unity specific, or if it's, like add-ons or whatever, software. Just showing you, how to use it and then explaining at the same time why to use it. So obviously I think I've been doing a good job of that, and some people have been saying they really like the series, so I thought I'd continue it. It's not too taxing on me to make. I just have to think of different particular things that maybe not everyone knows about or knows how to use, and just doing a quick explanation on it. And then if people want to know more, then they can learn more, or I can show them more if people want it. So obviously after this video, if you want to see more about it, then just feel free to say so, and obviously like and subscribe would mean the most to me. But anyway, so what we're doing is we're going to be looking at Blender. Now, obviously, I'm sure like 90% of the people watching the video at least know what Blender is. And then I would say maybe, I don't know, 50 or 60% might have used Blender. That's completely guess, those statistics. But anyway, what I want to do is, obviously, this is a video from ages ago, and I know you won't have all seen it, but I took part in Ludum Dare 41, and then sadly I wasn't around to be taking part in Ludum in 42. But 43 is coming up, and I'm most likely going to take part in it. So for Ludum Dare 41, obviously I put out a time-lapse video of me just, doing all the different things on it, and talking over it as well, just showing like what I did at different points and how I made the game. Obviously, the game I made was for the theme of two incompatible genres, so I mixed bullet hell and card games because they don't go together at all. And then I ended up coming out with a really awkward to use bullet hell. So obviously the speed of the bombs ramp up over time, and then you've got cards to play to move. Obviously the controls are really bad, but that's the whole point of the theme, to be honest. This is only day one. If you saw the day two, it'd look a bit more polished than this. This was just the end of day one. But as you see, throughout the video, I use random pieces of software. So at the start of day two, I use BFXR, I think it's called, which is this thing for making sound effects and audio clips. I might actually do a video on that, just like using some simple audio software to add sound effects to the game, and then how to actually use them in Unity, like calling them in code and stuff like that. That would be a good idea for the next video. But in this video, you'll see, I have the default models, like I use the capsule for the player and whatever, the cube for the floor, and extended it. But for example, rather than having some, just black spheres, I decided to make them look like bombs, and I thought, for the sake of something quick I made in a few minutes, it's not that bad. Now, a lot of people want to add stuff to their game that aren't just the default shapes and meshes that you get. So you need to make your own meshes and models. And obviously, there's more than just Blender in terms of software. But Blender's probably, it might not be the easiest to pick up because the interface is not a mess, but it gives you more tools than you're going to use. There's this saying how 20% of the tools are used 80% of the time, which is definitely true. If you've used it, you'll know that. With Unity, I don't think that's the case. I think you actually use a lot of the tools. Not all of them, but use a lot of them. But anyway, I'm just going to show you not necessarily how to be a professional modeler, because I am by no means professional, but just showing you how to like model a few things, use a few tools, a few shortcuts, and so on, and just what you can do in Blender, and then how to export it to Unity, and just the different ways of using it. So obviously this capsule here, right? On a object in Unity, you have, by default, if it's an object in the scene, you have capsule and mesh renderer. Well, not always capsule. You have a mesh filter and a mesh renderer. The mesh filter is what mesh it uses, so it's a capsule. Now, if you go on here, you actually see the other one. So we've got cube, capsule, whatever, different meshes. Sorry. Let's put that back to capsule. Then we have the mesh renderer. I can't speak. Sorry, renderer, which is what makes us visually see it. The current thing means, yep, that's its mesh, but we don't actually see it without this. So you need those two in conjunction to actually render it. And then obviously materials. Now, these are the default meshes, so it tells you even here how many vertices they've got and tries, and obviously you expect a cube to have less. This cube actually has more than you need. Like, you could just have, 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom as vertices, but they've gone for 20, they've gone for, on each side they have those. Actually, wait. No, they've got more than they have to, but they've just done it not in a silly way. I guess it just adds for more movement. Like, the more vertices you add, the more movable the object is in terms of distortion, because all distortion is vertex displacement by moving the vertices. Obviously a sphere is smoother the more you have. Like if you look, this is a sphere, and from here it looks like, you know, perfectly spherical. If you get really close, you can actually see it kind of goes like straight line. Then there's a point, straight line, point, straight line. Now let's put that back. We're gonna make our own. So if you haven't already, you know, just go search Blender. You get blender.org, download Blender there. There's all the different downloads, whatever you need for your operating system or whatever. And I've not updated in ages, but it's fine. You don't need the newest version or anything. So you open it up, you get, you know, this thing's always here on the newest version. Now, what you want to do is, if you're modeling... Now, Blender isn't designed for games. It obviously is very good for it. It's just, that's not its original intention. So it's got like a camera and lighting for if you want to render your scene. I always forget how to do that. Rendered? Yeah, so there's the scene with the lighting over here, just like it was. We don't want that. So, let's put this back to normal. We're in edit mode. So, put it in object mode. So we're going to right click on this. Now this is the camera. It's not used for games. It's just used for the normal Blender tools when you're using cameras in a scene. So if you press the delete button on your keyboard, the del button, delete, whatever it is in yours, it comes up with this little, you know, thing here. You just press the delete button. Obviously Blender has like infinite amounts of shortcuts, and I don't even know all of them. I just know most of the useful ones. So when you left click, instead of actually interacting with things, it sets this 3D cursor, which is basically, well, it's a cursor, obviously, but it doesn't move with your mouse. It just goes to when you click. Now, you can center it by holding Shift and pressing C. That centers it. And all it means is it's the place where when you make a new object, that's where it's going to get spawned. So if I delete the cube, so right click, del, click, it's centered on the origin. Obviously it shows you down here, you know, Y forwards is that way, X forwards is that way, and then Z forwards is up. If you have a numpad on your keyboard, you can actually use the numpad key, so you can press like 1, 2, 3, you know, you can just mess around with those to see what you're doing. There's two kinds of views, by the way, just in general with cameras. You've got orthographic and perspective. If you look at the top, it says, you know, perspective, orthographic. And the difference is perspective has depth and orthographic doesn't. It's like this in Unity too. If you click here for persp, it goes to ISO. And isometric is the same in here as orthographic. So if we had this straight on, so we press like X, for example, it is completely flat. There's no depth. We can't tell how far that thing is away, no matter how far we move it in the direction. Because like if I bring this here, the reason it disappears actually is because it's gone through the camera. If we actually go out of that now, you'll have seen the player is now going out of range. So let's just put that back, whatever. So where was I? Let's put this back to normal mode and just, you know, rotate the camera around, whatever. So you want to be using perspective mode most of the time, but orthographic's good for when you're lining things up correctly and you don't want to be kind of misinformed by perspective, because it can sometimes throw you off. But anyway, you only care about making stuff. So we've got the origin point selected, and if you hold Shift A, you just press Shift and then, well, you hold Shift and tap A, it brings up this menu. Now, obviously if you go off it, then it closes, so Shift A. Meshes are what you're going to be using most of the time. There are obviously other things you can use, and I haven't used all of these before, if I'm being honest, but I've used most of them. So meshes. Obviously, these are the most common meshes. These are just default meshes, and then you can turn these into whatever you want by adding vertices, stretching, cutting, doing whatever you want. So let's start off with a cube, okay? So here's a cube, and that's just what we started off originally. And when you start it in, you know, we have a radius here, which obviously it's a cube, so it seems a bit weird saying radius because you expect that to be a circle, but it's the distance from the center to the outside, which in this sense is literally just the scale, to be honest. I don't know why they call it radius. And then we've got location to spawn it on, you know, 0, 0, 0 is the origin. That's talking about stuff that you don't really need to know because it's pretty obvious anyway. Now, tab changes between edit and object mode. Now, object mode is just for moving stuff around pretty much. Edit lets you actually move vertices, select different edges, faces, move things. So let's say we've got this cube here. If I click off it, it doesn't actually do anything off the bat. If you press A, select all, and if you press A when you already selected all, it deselects. So let's say I want to move everything. You know, I select all and I move. There you go. and then Control Z to undo. Let's say I want to move a particular vertex. I don't like this cube being like this. I mean, one thing I'm going to do first is actually, I'm going to Control S to save, and it's going to bring you to this, and we're going to go find our project. So if I go to wherever this project is, so it'll be in, I don't know, Unity Games, and then whatever project this one's called, Cinemachine. Wait, no, what's the actual project called? It's in the voice recognition one. So let's just go to Assets and Scene. No, let's just go to Assets and save it, and we'll call it Model Testing .blend. Okay, so you press enter and you think, okay, yeah, whatever. Go back to Unity, and here it is. It appears in your assets. Here's the model. Now, when you get your model, obviously it's just a cube by default. There are these different settings when you click on it up here. So what we want to do is we want to go to the animation. Now, this doesn't have any animation, so just uncheck import animation and press apply. We don't care about that. It's a waste. Materials, we've not bothered with materials yet, but leave them on there. And model, all that's fine. It's default. It's good settings. Now, when you drag it in, it looks like the normal cube. Now, it's 1 unit. Now, obviously, how it converts between Blender and Unity is it's 1 unit to 1 unit. So if your cube is 1 by 1, then yeah. If it isn't the right size, obviously you can just scale it. Now, whatever we edit here, this object is actually the model. So if you want to make it into an object like that you use, so let's say you model an enemy and you want multiple enemies, once you've modified it to be the right scale and put scripts on it, you want to prefab it, obviously. So let's remove the animators. We don't need that, obviously. It's just default. It's put on there. And then here we go. We're using cube. Now, if you look here, these cubes are basically the same. Now, the only difference is about this UV mapping. We haven't UV unwrapped our cube, but that's fine. That's for another video. Now, yeah, it's a cube, whatever. It's cool, but we already had a cube. You know, you can put material on it, whatever. If you look down here, inside the model, there's actually separate parts to it. So one is the material, the mesh, and then the avatar. And I've never actually used the avatar. I don't know what it is, but it's always there. It's to do with the animation, I think. Now, let's say we want to move a vertex. So here's our vertex. We've right-clicked on it. We can just pick one. Now, if you didn't know, vertices are the edges. Actually, no, that's not true. Edges are the edges. Vertices are the corner points where edges are connected. And faces are the points where edges are connected. Yeah, I'm saying that right. So wherever there's a point to a vertex, it uses edges to connect to other vertices. So this vertex connects this one via this edge. Then faces are made up wherever edges are connected to the point where it's a closed system. So if we go to, if you see down here, we've got vertex select with a little point, then you've got edge select, and then face select. So edge select, you know, you can select these parts. So let's say I want to move this edge out, like so. This edge is connected to these vertices, so these vertices move with it. But let's say I want to move this face. So here's a face, the whole entire face. I want to move that down. And this one in, and then this one up, whatever. We've got ourselves a wacky shape now. Let's save it. So Control S, save. Okay, so you've saved your object. Now, if we go back to Unity, one really nice thing is that it actually updates. As long as you save it as a blend file and don't export it to an FBX file, it will keep the same. Basically, if you've got it and you've seen it, it'll update it. Now, you can delete this blend1 file, you don't need it. So everything's the same here, but here's our mesh now. Our mesh has changed. It's still called cube because in Blender, whatever your mesh name up here is what it is as in Unity. This is our weird shape, whatever. If we actually added a collider to it, obviously a box collider wouldn't be really good for this. So what you can do is you can add a mesh collider and make it convex. And as you see, it actually, if we disable our mesh renderer, we have a collider customed to our mesh. And the reason why that works for the collider is because we pass in the mesh. Now, if we had this with a cylinder collider, obviously it'd be ridiculous, but you could do it if you wanted to. So that's really handy for doing things like that. Like, for example, if we added a rigid body to this, it uses gravity, that's not a trigger. We drag this up and we let go. We've got our model, you know, we could tip it. It doesn't like being tipped. If we drag it up and then, I've paused the game by the way, so if we drop it like this, obviously it's its own object, it works independently, it interacts with physics how it should. There you go. Now, if we change this again, there are other tools you want to use. So rather than just stretching edges, you might want to make more edges and vertices to interact with and, you know, faces as well. So what we can do is we can select this face, and we might want to say, let's say we want to make some kind of chest looking shape. So let's just delete everything, just make sure it's definitely deleted. We are going to make a cube, and we're going to tab to go into edit mode, click on the side, and we're just going to, well actually no, sorry, let's just select the object, press S. So some shortcuts I need to go through. So S is for scale, so S, and you drag in and out to shrink up and down. Now, if you want to scale only on one vertex, on one on one axis, you tap that key. So if you want to scale only on the Z, there you go. Only on the X, only on the Y. Now we want to scale on the X. We want to shrink the whole thing overall, to be honest, like so. And now we want to perhaps make this be a box. We'll make it just a box. So if we've got this top face selected, we want to basically bring it down. Now the problem is it's currently connected to the edge vertices on the top 4 edges. So if we bring that down, it just shrinks the object basically, or squishes it. So we want to make it separate. So what you can do is you can actually press E to extrude. And actually what that does is it makes it start a new, I don't know what you'd call it basically. You know what I mean though. Rather than just stretching up the current vertices, it leaves basically those vertices there where they were. Ignore this current mesh messing up. I'll explain that in a minute. So it keeps these where they are, but it lets you drag new ones. Now, let's say we wanted to bring it down. The problem is it looks horrible. Now, the reason being is because these faces here that we're moving are in the exact same positions of the faces down here. So they're overlapping and it's getting, overlap problems, which is something you need to avoid. Now, what we can do is actually we can deselect by right clicking. Now, what it's done is it's actually created those there's actually 2 vertices on this corner. We've still got the face selected, but there's another one below it. As you see, it's still there. So what we can do is we can then press S for scale, and we can shrink. And as you see, that shrinks this face only, but we still got all the other ones intact, and we can go bigger or whatever. So if we scale this down, let me actually just, I'm pretty sure you can, no, that's not what I wanted. It's fine though. So if we scale, I'm just trying to remember how to make it even. Well, we'll scale like that, and then we'll scale like that. Well, this isn't a perfect thing right now. So what I did was I scaled on the Z-axis or whatever axis it was, and then scaled on the Y as well. So now we've got this here. Now, as you see, what we can do is we can drag that down. It's better than it was because we can now do this, and if we save that, you'll see we now have a box that has indents on it. If it even does that. For some reason, it's not doing it. That's actually quite odd, unless it's on the underside. Yeah, I'm silly. It's flipped. Well, now it's on its side, but it doesn't really matter. We've got it. We don't want it to actually, so obviously tab between the modes, select the top face. If you're not in face select mode, they're down here. So if you select this face and bring it back up to the correct height, so we can just undo basically. Whoops. You want to actually do what we did again, where we leave these vertices where they are, this one here, and then there, and then these 2 corners. We want to leave them where they are. So press E and then right click. Now this is separate, so we can move it up and down. So if we go down, obviously we don't want to go down below the bottom, so we'll say down to about there. And we'll go back to object mode, and then now we've got our box. So if we press File, Save, go back, you'll see, boom, we've got our box. It's an amazing box. So obviously let's just go 0, 0, 90. So here's our box, and that's got a rigid body, and it drops. Now the problem is we've given it a vertex mesh collider, sorry. Now that works for dropping. Now as far as I'm aware, let's just test something. So if we create a cube, that'll do, with a rigid body. And I pause actually and just bring that up here. Shrink it. You see, the problem is it's magically floating, and that's because we've used convex for the collider. Now the problem with convex is what it does is convex cannot go in on itself. That's what it means. It can only go outwards. So for this, we would actually not be able to use convex because the mesh wouldn't work properly. Obviously, the reason being that we've used convex for the whole shape. Now, one way you could use convex is if you had the mesh collide on each wall, but it become more taxing the more you have. So you can just put it as a non-convex, but the problem is you can't have a collider non-convex, and that's why it went through the ground. So, you got to watch out for things like that. The best way to get around this would put non-convex and just get rid of the rigid body, basically. So if we do that now, so this doesn't have a rigid body, but it's like that. Let's just obviously set it down to a 0 or 1, whatever. Now if we got like an object like a sphere, brought it all the way up, and if we put that there, shrink it a bit, and give it rigid body, boom, it goes into the box, and it works. So now if we, tip the box, it's on the ground level. There we go. As you see, it's in the box, and if we rotate the box, for some the physics thing is not updating till I move it. I think that's just because I'm messing around in edit mode of it. If this was actually moving properly, then it would actually update normally. But as you see, we're now using our new object as an actual physics interaction. Now it's obviously best if I paused it, dragged it up, maybe tilted it that way, and then unpaused. That would work. There you go. So that's that. Now, there's only a few more things I'll show for this video. This was just an introduction. So one thing is, your mesh, it's all right, it works, but you might want it to look a bit nicer. So there's one thing called bevels. So let's say you have a shape like this, and you want to select the edges, so like that. So if you want to select multiple edges, you hold Shift, click. Now, that's easy enough. There's 4 edges. But what if your object had like 100 edges around the bottom? Well, the fastest way to do it is hold Alt, and then right click. Whoops, wrong thing. Am I in the wrong mode? I can't select properly right now. Is it not actually letting me select the edge loop? Is it even in edge select mode? What's going on? Why is the thing there anyway? Alright, something's going on. I just can't move it. Alright. It's still not letting me. I think my alt's messed up because it was working earlier, and this is how I always do it. I do have 2 alt buttons, and neither of them seem to be working. But anyway, let's just select them with Shift. And then what you can do is you can do spacebar. Now, spacebar in Blender opens up a little search thing that lets you search for every possible thing you can do. And there's almost infinite amount of things you can do. So we want a bevel. So if we just bev, transform bevel on the mesh. Now what you can do is it then lets you drag in and out to change the intensity of it. So obviously you can go ridiculous. And currently it's only affecting those edges that we've selected, which is fine. But you just got to keep in mind that we've got those new faces on the inside, which count as the inside of the object. So maybe you only want to do it a little bit like this, for example. So you add a little nice thing to the side, and then you select the outer edges like this, and then you bevel again. Obviously, bevel is actually Control B. There's things for shortcuts for most. Now we're going to start getting problems because let's say we do that, right? That looks nice, except for the fact that it does this. We get these not very nice. Trying to move around. Like, look, what's going on here? So basically, these 2 bevels have overlapped, basically, which isn't nice. I think I want to test something, actually. This is something I haven't done. But if I don't have high hopes for this working, so just, let's say, Control B. Oh, it does work. Yeah, okay. I do have high hopes for it working. Basically, what this does is it makes them all bevel at the same time and interact. Now, it worked in most cases, but we've got some more problems. So if you ever use Blender, one thing you'll see a lot is these problems, where it just graphically looks weird, and that's because this face is overlapping. So if you go into edit mode, now you'll see here, let's go to vertice select. you got your vertice here, and the problem is there's multiple faces overlapping with it from the bevel. So there's always different ways to clean this up, and it's never a nice job. But actually, if you click on a vertice, for example, and press delete vertices that you've selected, obviously you don't want to select all those because they're connected in terms of edges. But you can always have a mess around with vertices and see what you can delete. See, I deleted a vertice there. I didn't break anything. The problem is actually just this whole layer, to be honest. It's not necessary because, as you see, if we've beveled it like that and we just want that to be our edge, yeah, this will actually be helpful in showing you a different tool. So obviously now I'm like opening the whole box up almost. So delete vertice, delete vertice, delete vertice, delete vertice. So now it's all open top, but there's no overlapping faces. But as you notice, we're missing some faces. And just to show you what does this look like in Blender, I mean in Unity, it looks like a mess. There's just going to be missing, like it's see-through now. It's just transparent because we're missing the faces, which looks really odd. Now there's a very handy tool called Fill, and if you haven't already guessed what it does, wait, there we go. Look, I just clicked on the edge, and it selected all. Alt-click. Yeah, it does work. So now I've selected this, and if I go Shift-Alt, can I select these? Yeah. If I do Fill now by pressing F, it actually fills the whole thing. But we don't want this middle face to be blocked, so we'll just delete that one face. Oh, there's two faces there. Did I connect everything? I think I did. Delete edges. Okay, so what I'd actually done is I'd filled in everything when I did the fill, which is not what you want, obviously. You don't want to fill everything in with that. So if I just go back, let's say I selected edge like this, and I went between this edge and this edge, fill. There you go, it's filled that. And then this edge and this edge, fill. This edge and this edge, fill. This edge and this edge, fill. And now there's just these corners. So you can go this edge, this edge, this edge, fill, boom, boom, whoops, boom, 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 fill, boom, 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 oops. Make sure you deselect by repressing A, boom, 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 fill. One thing to note is when you're using Blender, it's a messy thing, and it can take you ages to fix the simplest things, unless you're an expert, which I'm not an expert by any means, but I still know what I'm doing. Now, if you look, I fixed this, and we have our nice shape now. Obviously, it looks a bit odd if you go inside of it, because the camera in Unity can do that. But now we have our nicer curved shape, and it works just the same. You know, we've got our collider on it. If we press play, it's going to drop the same. Obviously, well, actually, we don't have rigid body on it, and we don't have the convex collider on it. So let's just set that back to 2 or 5. Boom, drops. Let's you know, rotate it and then drop it. It works. So there we go. We've made our own model. It's like a little bathtub or something. I don't know, really bad bathtub. But anyway, so hopefully that was a good enough introduction to Blender if you've never used it before. Obviously, this was just kind of playing it by ear. I hadn't rehearsed this video. I'm just using what I know and teaching useful shortcuts for Blender. So obviously you have S for scale, R for rotation, E for extrusion. Then there's Control B for bevel, spacebar for the little search thing, which can help you if you need something specific. Clicking on edges and dragging, tab to go between edit and object mode, and then obviously save it and export. Well, you just save it in a blend file in your Unity project and then just drag it into the scene, and there you go, you've got your model. So anyway, I hope this video is good enough. It's getting on a lot, so I really want to I really want to get over with this video right now. So anyway, hoping you like the series. Any more ideas for things to explain in Unity and show like how to use it and why, just feel free to leave them below. Obviously like and subscribe if you're new here, and thanks for watching, and goodbye.